In 2019, a soil scientist from Penn State University drove his truck down a dirt road in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. His name was Dr. William Curran. He had spent 30 years studying soil degradation across American farmland. He had documented the collapse of organic matter in industrial fields. He had watched topsoil disappear at rates that should have terrified everyone. But what he found that day in Lancaster County made him question everything he thought he knew. He was visiting an Amish farm owned by a man named Eli Stoltzfus. The farm had been in the Stoltzfus family for 9 generations, 240 years of continuous cultivation on the same 300 acres. Dr. Curran expected to find depleted soil. Every agricultural model predicted it. 2 centuries of farming should have stripped the land bare. The organic matter should have been gone. The minerals should have been exhausted. He pulled out his testing equipment and pushed a probe into the earth. The reading made no sense. Organic matter, 8.2%. The average American farm has 2%. The Stoltzfus farm had 4 times more. Soil depth, over 18 inches of rich, dark topsoil. Industrial farms average 6 inches and shrinking. Microbial activity, off the charts. The soil was more alive than anything Dr. Curran had measured in his career. He looked at Eli Stoltzfus, an old man in a straw hat who had never read a soil science textbook in his life. "How?" Dr. Curran asked. "How is this possible after 240 years?" Eli smiled. The same smile his father had smiled when asked the same question. The same smile his grandfather had smiled, and his great-grandfather before him. "We feed the soil," Eli said. "The soil feeds us. That's all there is to it." Dr. Curran spent 3 days on that farm. He documented practices that contradicted almost everything modern agriculture teaches. He found techniques that had been passed down for generations, refined over centuries, proven across thousands of farms. And he found something else. None of it appeared in any garden book he had ever read. None of it was taught in any agricultural university. None of it was promoted by any extension service. The most successful soil building system in American history had been systematically excluded from official knowledge. Welcome to Nature's Lost Vault. Today, we're opening the file on the Amish soil secret, the practice that builds soil instead of destroying it, the method that has kept farms fertile for centuries, and the reason why the industry that sells soil amendments doesn't want you to know it exists. If this knowledge matters to you, subscribe and hit the bell. Every like and share preserves what they tried to erase. The vault is open. The story of Amish soil begins not in Pennsylvania, but in the war-torn villages of 17th century Switzerland. In 1693, a group of Anabaptist Christians faced a choice: abandon their faith or flee their homeland. They chose exile. Led by Jacob Amann, they scattered across Europe, eventually finding passage to the New World. William Penn, himself a religious outcast, offered them land in his colony. In 1737, the first Amish families arrived in Lancaster County. They brought almost nothing with them: a few tools, some seeds, and knowledge that had been refined through generations of persecution. Knowledge that allowed communities to survive when everything else failed. Knowledge that did not depend on markets, on governments, on any system that could be taken away. They knew how to build soil. The land they found in Pennsylvania was not easy, rocky, hilly, covered with forests that had to be cleared by hand. The Amish did not have tractors. They did not have chemicals. They had horses, hand tools, and the absolute necessity of making their farms work. Failure was not an option. There was nowhere else to go. So they watched. They observed what worked and what didn't. They shared information between families, between communities, across generations. Practices that succeeded were remembered. Practices that failed were forgotten. Over 280 years, they conducted the longest agricultural experiment in American history. And they discovered something that modern soil science is only beginning to understand. Soil is not a dead medium that holds plants upright. Soil is a living ecosystem that must be fed. Stop feeding it and it dies. Feed it properly and it grows stronger every year. This is the secret that Eli Stoltzfus inherited from 9 generations of farmers. Not a technique, a relationship. The first principle of Amish soil building is so simple that modern agriculture dismisses it entirely. Nothing leaves the farm. On an Amish farm, there is no such thing as waste. Everything that comes from the soil returns to the soil. Every scrap of organic matter cycles back into the land. Animal manure goes directly onto fields, not into lagoons that leak into groundwater, not into bags that are shipped across the country. Onto the fields, where it was always meant to go. Kitchen scraps feed chickens or pigs or compost piles. Crop residues are plowed under or fed to livestock. Fallen leaves are collected and spread on gardens. Nothing is burned, nothing is thrown away, nothing leaves. This sounds primitive to modern ears. Industrial agriculture separates animals from crops. Feedlots concentrate thousands of cattle in one location, while cornfields hundreds of miles away are fertilized with synthetic nitrogen. The manure becomes a pollution problem. The crops become dependent on purchased inputs. The Amish never made this separation. On the Stoltzfus farm, 30 dairy cows produce roughly 180 tons of manure per year. That manure contains nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, and dozens of trace minerals. It contains billions of beneficial microorganisms. All of it goes back to the land. Eli Stoltzfus has never purchased synthetic fertilizer. His father never purchased it. His grandfather never purchased it. 9 generations of farmers have maintained fertility through the simple practice of returning to the soil what the soil gave them. The math is elegant. Crops remove nutrients from soil. Animals eat crops and concentrate those nutrients in manure. Farmers who grow crops must purchase fertilizer because the nutrients have left their land. The fertilizer industry exists because industrial agriculture broke a cycle that never needed to be broken. Eli Stoltzfus doesn't think about this in economic terms. He thinks about it the way his father taught him and his grandfather taught his father. The soil gave us this harvest. We give it back. That's only fair. Fairness, reciprocity. A relationship, not a transaction. This is the first Amish secret. And it is not in any garden book because garden books are written to sell garden products. A closed loop that requires no purchases is not a marketable concept. The second principle builds directly on the first. Diversity is not optional. Walk through an industrial farm and you will see one crop. Corn stretching to the horizon, soybeans covering thousands of acres, wheat fields without a single other plant visible. This is called monoculture. It is the foundation of modern agriculture. It is also the fastest way to destroy soil ever invented. Walk through an Amish farm and you will see something completely different. The Stoltzfus farm grows corn, oats, wheat, barley, hay, alfalfa, vegetables, and fruit. Eli rotates crops through 7 different fields on a 7-year cycle. No crop grows in the same field 2 years in a row. Some fields grow a different crop every single year for 7 consecutive years. This is not inefficiency. This is engineering. Different crops have different root structures. Corn roots go deep. Oat roots spread wide. Alfalfa roots penetrate clay that nothing else can reach. By rotating crops, Amish farmers ensure that every level of the soil is accessed, aerated, and fed. Different crops have different nutrient needs. Corn is a heavy nitrogen feeder. Legumes like alfalfa and clover fix nitrogen from the air and add it to the soil. By following corn with legumes, Amish farmers replenish exactly what corn removed. Different crops attract different pests. Corn rootworm devastates cornfields that are planted continuously, but corn rootworm cannot survive in an oat field. By rotating, Amish farmers break pest cycles without pesticides. Dr. Curran documented something remarkable on Amish farms. Despite never using pesticides, Amish fields had lower pest pressure than industrial farms that sprayed multiple times per season. The diversity created balance. Predator insects controlled pest insects. Soil organisms suppressed plant diseases. Modern agriculture responds to pest problems with chemicals. Amish agriculture prevents pest problems with design. But diversity on Amish farms goes far beyond crop rotation. Every Amish farm has livestock, not just one kind. Cows, horses, chickens, pigs, sometimes sheep or goats. Each animal contributes something different. Cows produce rich manure ideal for pastures and hayfields. Chickens scratch through cow manure, breaking it down faster and eating fly larvae. Pigs root through waste areas, turning scraps into fertility. Horses provide power that requires no petroleum. The animals work together, the crops work together. The entire farm functions as a single integrated system. This integration is invisible to industrial agriculture, which separates everything into specialized operations. Corn farms don't have cows. Dairy farms don't have chickens. Everyone buys what they need from everyone else. The Amish buy almost nothing, because their farms produce almost everything. Garden books don't teach integration because integration cannot be sold in packages. You cannot buy a complete ecosystem at a garden center, but you can buy fertilizer, pesticides, herbicides, and soil amendments, which is exactly what you need when your system is broken. The third principle is the one that most directly contradicts modern agriculture. Never leave soil bare. Eli Stoltzfus pointed to a field that had just been harvested. Where an industrial farmer would see empty ground waiting for next season, Eli saw an emergency. Naked soil is dying soil, he said. We cover it as fast as we can. Within days of harvest, that field would be planted with a cover crop. Winter rye, crimson clover, or a mix of species that would grow through autumn and into winter. The cover crop does not produce a harvest. From an industrial perspective, it is waste. Seed costs money, labor costs money. Why plant something you cannot sell? The Amish have a different calculation. Bare soil erodes. Rain hits exposed earth and carries topsoil away. Wind lifts dry particles and blows them across counties. The U.S. loses nearly 2 billion tons of topsoil every year, mostly from fields left bare between crops. Covered soil stays put. Plant roots hold particles in place. Leaves break the force of rainfall. Wind cannot lift what is anchored by living plants. But erosion prevention is only the beginning. Cover crops feed soil biology through the winter months, when industrial fields lie dormant and dying. The roots exude sugars that feed bacteria and fungi. The bacteria and fungi cycle nutrients and build soil structure. By spring, covered soil is more fertile than it was at harvest. Cover crops also add organic matter. When Eli terminates his winter rye by rolling it flat, the dead plants become mulch. The roots decompose underground, leaving channels that improve water infiltration. The carbon in those plants becomes soil carbon, building the dark, rich earth that made Dr. Curran's instruments give impossible readings. The Amish call cover crops green manure, not because they look like manure, but because they function like manure. They feed the soil. Industrial agriculture has recently discovered cover crops. Agricultural universities now recommend them. Extension services promote them. This seems like progress. But there is a catch. Industrial cover cropping requires terminating the cover with herbicides before planting the cash crop. The chemicals that kill the cover crop also damage soil biology. The benefit of the cover is partially negated by the method of termination. The fourth principle is the one that terrifies the fertilizer industry most. Soil does not need synthetic fertility. Soil creates its own fertility when properly managed. This statement is heresy in modern agriculture. The entire structure of contemporary farming assumes that soil cannot produce enough nutrients without synthetic inputs. The Haber-Bosch process that synthesizes nitrogen from atmosphere is credited with feeding billions of people. But the Amish have been feeding themselves for 3 centuries without it. How? The answer lies beneath the surface in a world invisible to the naked eye. 1 teaspoon of healthy soil contains more living organisms than there are humans on Earth. Bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, arthropods. A universe of life that most farmers never see. These organisms do not just live in soil, they make soil. Bacteria decompose organic matter, releasing nutrients locked in dead plant tissue. Fungi form networks that transport minerals from places of abundance to places of need. Mycorrhizal fungi attach to plant roots and extend their reach 100-fold. In healthy soil, plants do not simply extract nutrients. They trade for them. Plant roots release sugars, compounds they produce through photosynthesis. Soil fungi take these sugars and offer minerals in exchange. Nitrogen, phosphorus, zinc, copper, boron. The fungal network mines the soil and delivers directly to the plants. This system is older than the dinosaurs. It is how forests grow without fertilizer. It is how prairies built the deep topsoil that made the Midwest the breadbasket of the world. And it is destroyed by synthetic fertilizer. When plants can access synthetic nitrogen directly, they stop trading with fungi. The roots stop producing sugars. The fungi starve. The network that built soil for millions of years collapses. Industrial farmers do not see this collapse happening. They see high yields. They see crops growing fast. They do not see the microscopic world dying beneath their feet. But the effects eventually become visible. Soil structure deteriorates. Without fungal networks binding particles together, soil compacts and erodes. Water infiltration decreases. Farmers must irrigate more. Drainage tiles must be installed to remove water that healthy soil would have absorbed. Organic matter declines. Without the full community of decomposers, plant residue sits on the surface instead of becoming humus. Carbon that should be building soil escapes into the atmosphere. Fertility requirements increase. As soil biology dies, more synthetic fertilizer is needed to maintain yields. Farmers become trapped on a chemical treadmill, applying more every year to achieve the same results. The Amish escape this trap by never entering it. Eli Stoltzfus has never applied synthetic nitrogen to his fields, but his soil has more available nitrogen than any industrial farm in his county. How? Legumes. Every Amish rotation includes nitrogen-fixing plants: alfalfa, clover, soybeans, peas. These plants partner with bacteria that convert atmospheric nitrogen into forms plants can use. A good stand of alfalfa fixes 200 pounds of nitrogen per acre per year for free from air. The nitrogen stays in the root nodules until the alfalfa is plowed under. Then it releases slowly, feeding the next crop exactly when needed. No runoff, no groundwater pollution, no purchase required. The fertilizer industry does not advertise this. A farmer who fixes nitrogen with legumes does not buy nitrogen from chemical companies. The solution to fertility is competition to their business model. Garden books rarely explain legume nitrogen fixation in depth. They mention it briefly, then dedicate chapters to synthetic fertilizer application, because the books are written by people trained in systems that depend on purchased inputs. The fifth principle takes the longest to understand. Time is a tool. Modern agriculture optimizes for this year. What produces the highest yield this season? What generates the most profit before winter? Short-term thinking dominates every decision. The Amish optimize for generations. When Eli Stoltzfus makes a decision about his farm, he considers what his grandchildren will inherit. Will this practice build soil or deplete it? Will this field be more fertile in 50 years or less? This time, Horizon changes everything. Industrial farmers can justify practices that destroy soil because they will retire before the consequences become severe. Let the next generation deal with declining yields. Let someone else solve the problem. Amish farmers cannot think this way. The next generation is not an abstraction. It is their own children, their own grandchildren, who will work the same fields and live on the same land. When your grandchildren will judge your decisions, when you make different decisions. Eli's grandfather planted chestnut trees that Eli now harvests. Eli is planting fruit trees that his grandchildren will harvest. The farm includes investments that will not pay off for decades, but will pay off forever once they mature. Industrial agriculture has no equivalent. Corporations optimize for quarterly earnings. Shareholders demand returns now, not in 50 years. The structure of modern agribusiness makes long-term thinking impossible. This is why Amish soil improves, while industrial soil degrades. Not because the Amish have superior knowledge, because they have a time horizon that allows good practices to compound across generations. The sixth principle is the one that ties everything together. Observation replaces prescription. Modern agriculture runs on prescriptions. Apply this much nitrogen. Spray this pesticide on this date. Follow this protocol exactly. The farmer becomes a technician executing instructions generated elsewhere. Amish agriculture runs on observation. What is the soil telling you? What do the plants need? What is working this year that didn't work last year? Every Amish farmer is a researcher conducting experiments on their own land. Eli Stoltzfus watches his fields constantly. He notices which areas drain poorly and adjusts his planting accordingly. He observes which cover crop mixtures perform best in his specific microclimate. He experiments with compost recipes and evaluates results over multiple seasons. His knowledge is specific to his farm. It cannot be written in a book because it applies nowhere else exactly. The hill behind his barn creates a frost pocket that requires different management than the south-facing slope. The clay subsoil in the west field holds water differently than the loam in the east. This local knowledge accumulates over generations. Eli knows which fields his grandfather struggled with and what solutions were eventually found. He knows the history of every acre, the floods and droughts and pest outbreaks and the responses that worked. This institutional memory cannot be purchased. Industrial agriculture has no institutional memory. Farmers come and go. Corporate managers rotate between positions. The land is treated as a commodity, interchangeable with any other land. When problems arise, industrial farmers call extension agents who prescribe standardized solutions. Spray this, apply that. The prescription comes from research stations that may be 1,000 miles away, in different soil and different climate. Sometimes the prescriptions work, often they don't. But there is no feedback loop. The researchers do not see the failures. The farmers do not understand the underlying biology well enough to adjust. Eli Stoltzfus has never called an extension agent. He doesn't need to. He has 240 years of accumulated observation, passed from father to son, refined in every generation. His solutions work because they were developed on his exact land by people who had no choice but to make them work. This is knowledge that cannot be taught in schools. It can only be inherited. And it is precisely this knowledge that modern agriculture has destroyed. When farmers leave the land, when children move to cities, when farms are consolidated into ever larger operations managed by rotating employees, the institutional memory dies. The observations of generations are lost. Industrial agriculture calls this efficiency. The Amish call it forgetting. Dr. William Curran published his findings about Amish soil in a peer-reviewed journal in 2021. The paper documented what generations of Amish farmers had known without needing scientific confirmation. Soil can be built. Fertility can increase indefinitely. Farming does not have to destroy the resource it depends upon. The paper received almost no media attention. Agricultural journals did not feature it. Extension services did not update their recommendations. The fertilizer industry did not acknowledge that alternatives to their products exist. Why? Because the Amish system cannot be monetized. There is no Amish seed company selling proprietary varieties. There is no Amish chemical company selling synthetic inputs. There is no Amish equipment dealer selling million-dollar machines. Everything the Amish do can be done by anyone willing to learn. No patents, no licenses, no annual purchases. Just knowledge, applied consistently for as long as you farm. This is intolerable to an industry built on annual sales. The fertilizer industry generates over $200 billion per year. The pesticide industry generates over $60 billion. The seed industry generates over $40 billion. These industries depend on farmers who cannot feed their soil, cannot control their pests, cannot save their own seeds. The Amish need none of it. A farming system that eliminates $300 billion in annual purchases is not something the agricultural industry will promote. It will be ignored. It will be dismissed as primitive, inefficient, unscalable. It will be excluded from garden books and agricultural curricula and extension recommendations. Not because it doesn't work, because it works too well. There is one more secret that Eli Stoltzfus shared with Dr. Curran. It was not about soil chemistry or crop rotation or cover crops. It was about something deeper. English farmers, Eli said, using the Amish term for non-Amish people, think they are fighting the land, fighting weeds, fighting pests, fighting soil, always fighting. He paused. Well, we are not fighting. We are cooperating. The land wants to grow food. We just help it do what it already wants to do. This philosophical difference underlies every practical technique. Industrial agriculture sees nature as an enemy to be conquered. Weeds must be killed, pests must be destroyed. Soil must be forced to produce through chemical intervention. Amish agriculture sees nature as a partner to be understood. Weeds indicate soil imbalances that can be corrected. Pests indicate ecosystem imbalances that can be restored. Soil will produce abundantly when its needs are met. The fighting approach requires constant escalation. Pests become resistant. Weeds evolve tolerance. Soil becomes more dependent on inputs. Each year requires more force to achieve the same results. The cooperation approach creates stability. Systems come into balance. Problems diminish over time. Each year requires less intervention as the farm approaches equilibrium. Eli Stoltzfus spends less time farming than his industrial neighbors. His yields are lower per acre, but his costs are nearly zero. His profit per hour of labor exceeds any industrial operation in the county, and his grandchildren will inherit land that is richer than it was when his grandfather first plowed it. The Amish are not perfect. They are not saints. They have their own problems and limitations and failures, but they have done something that modern agriculture claims is impossible. They have farmed the same land for nearly 3 centuries without destroying it. They have built soil while everyone around them depleted it. They have maintained fertility without purchasing it. And they have done this using techniques that are available to anyone. You do not need to become Amish to feed your soil. You do not need to reject modern life to stop depleting your garden. You only need to understand what Eli Stoltzfus understood, what his father understood, what 9 generations of Stoltzfus farmers have understood. Soil is alive. Feed it, and it will feed you. Starve it, and it will eventually starve you too. Nothing leaves the farm. Everything that comes from soil returns to soil. Diversity is not optional. Different plants feed different soil organisms and prevent different problems. Never leave soil bare. Covered soil lives, naked soil dies. Soil creates its own fertility. Build the biology, and the chemistry follows. Time is a tool. Think in generations, not seasons. Observation replaces prescription. Your land is unique. Learn its specific needs. And above all, cooperation, not combat. Work with natural systems instead of against them. These principles built the richest agricultural soil in North America. They kept farms productive for 240 years. They feed communities without destroying the land those communities depend upon. They are not in garden books, because garden books are written to sell products. They are not in agricultural curricula, because agricultural schools are funded by industries that profit from the practices that destroy soil. They are not in extension recommendations, because extension services serve the industrial system, not the alternatives to it, but they are available to anyone willing to learn. The Amish will talk to you if you approach with respect. Their farms are visible from public roads. Their methods are not hidden. They have simply been ignored. Dr. Curran left the Stoltzfus farm with more questions than answers. How could one community have figured out what thousands of agricultural scientists missed? How could knowledge this valuable have been excluded from official agriculture for so long? He didn't have answers. But he knew something had changed. His next research project would not ask how to make industrial agriculture slightly less destructive. It would ask how Amish methods could be adapted for farmers who wanted to stop destroying their soil entirely. The paper he published in 2021 was just the beginning. The Amish secret is out. The soil that was built across 9 generations is documented and measured and confirmed. The methods that seemed primitive are being recognized as sophisticated. And the garden books will have to be rewritten. Not because the industry wants them rewritten, because enough people are learning the truth that ignoring it is no longer possible. Eli Stoltzfus doesn't care about the scientific papers or the changing recommendations. He will keep farming the way his father taught him, the way his grandfather taught his father. He will feed his soil. His soil will feed him. His grandchildren will inherit land that is richer than it is today. That's all there is to it. If this vault opens something for you, subscribe to Nature's Lost Vault and hit the bell.